Is that good?
There we go. It's official.
Shauna, on my phone, it says like you are in practice session, start webinar. Should I do anything?
Don't start
Okay.
webinar.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Let's see. Great.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another virtual Beat Talk. We're honored tonight to have Heather Rolleston, Principal and Design Director of BDP Quadrangle, host tonight's Beat Talk. My name is Shauna Seligman, and I'm an executive member of Beat. Joining me this evening are Fotini Pitoglo and Jennifer Esposito, executive members of Beat, Betsy Williamson and Sonia Ramundi, advisory members of Beat, and Melanie Rank, who is an executive member of Beat and also a senior associate and senior architect at BDP Quadrangle.
Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. As Shauna mentioned, I'm Fotini Pitoglu and I'm an executive member of BEAT. I would like to begin by taking a moment to acknowledge that the land we are based on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit.
BEAT is a volunteer-run organization made up of architects, designers, leaders, and entrepreneurs, creating opportunities for community building, advocacy, networking, and mentorship. We believe that empowering women in the design community improves and enriches the practice of architecture, the quality of the built environment, and ultimately the human experience. BEAT Talks are a series of discussions held at the offices of architects across the city. Hosts will share their learned experience. You may sign up for our mailing list on the BEAT website to receive notifications for more details on upcoming virtual events.
This talk is being recorded and will be posted to the BEAT YouTube page for those who could not attend. All of the participants' microphones were muted upon entry, but you will be able to submit questions at any point during the presentation in the Q&A section at the bottom center of the screen. We will read your questions after Heather's presentation. The chat box can be used for any immediate troubleshooting assistance.
This webinar also qualifies for one OAA structured learning hour. Please stay until the end of the talk to receive your certificate via email. And now I'd like to pass it on to Melanie to say a few words about this evening's host.
Thanks, Shauna. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It is with great pleasure that I introduce my colleague, a principal and design director at BDP Quadrangle, Heather Rolleston. Since joining the firm about 5 years ago, Heather has consistently elevated the design in our office on a wide variety of project scales and sectors. She is active outside of the office as a member of the design review panels for both City of Toronto and City of Ottawa, and she's often a guest critic at the University of Waterloo School of Architecture. In 2018, Heather was nominated to the ULI Women's Leadership Initiative Championship team. In our studio, Heather leads by example. She is a mentor to a great many people. She is unique, humble, strong, and always approachable. Often I would run into Heather in the office while she was rushing to the photocopier on her way to a meeting, or at her desk surrounded by colored markers and rolls of trace. She always seemed to have so much going on and like there was just never enough time in her day. Heather has a great sense of humor and she is always up for anything. So I really look forward to what she has to share with us tonight. And with that, I pass it over to you, Heather.
Thanks, Melanie. Wasn't prepared for such a glowing introduction. Anyway, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for attending this evening. When BEAT approached me, I decided instead of, I can't seem to advance my slides. Should I stop sharing and retry?
You can try exiting the full screen if that works.
Yikes. I think I have to stop sharing and try again. I can't even press escape here. Should I try again?
Yeah, you can stop sharing and reshare.
Let's try this. That's so funny. It worked in the test session.
Does it work if you exit full screen?
Okay, hang on. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Okay, instead of giving in to the perpetual COVID exhaustion that we're all feeling, I decided rather to challenge myself and spend a few more hours on my laptop this evening to engage in a discussion. It's challenging, of course, because presenting to your peer group and to your mentors is the most nerve-wracking. It's not like presenting to the general public. You are my biggest critics, and you are indeed qualified to be. I am operating in the full knowledge that we're all at home and that some of us are very capable multitaskers and may have our cameras off for a good many varied and important reasons. Thank you for joining. I gave a portion of this talk back in March of this year as part of International Women's Day, or IWD as it is now known. I'd like to think that that day gives us all pause. Knowing the history makes me feel a bit anxious and then proud, and then I settle on contemplative. There are a range of emotions that I try to sort out that each year perhaps increase as I get older. I reflect on us as a society and on myself. What have I accomplished this past year? What have I contributed? I tend to think I lead more quietly and by example than shouting from a mountaintop. It's not to say that I'm not proud of our accomplishments as women, but isn't being classified as different or special because of gender identity something that we are trying to correct as a society? Or have we indeed made enough strides in this regard to the point that women need now more than ever to be celebrated and made distinct? What is absolutely necessary is to engage in and debate the issues at hand. A healthy discourse about equality is essential. Even I have to admit that sometimes shouting from mountaintops is what it takes to get everyone's attention. I didn't know until I did the research that IWD was started in 1975 by the United Nations, and that each year there is a theme. In 2019, it was Balance for Better, with a byline of Think Equal, Build Smart, and Innovate for Change. 2020 saw I Am Gender Equality, and this year's theme for these last remaining months until March is Choose to Challenge. So let's take full advantage of this declaration and ask ourselves some tough questions tonight. During my career so far, there have been some standout projects that have indeed given me pause and have, in retrospect, caused us to respond with design solutions that are perhaps from a bit of a different perspective. We all have unique design sensibilities, and I continue to ask myself, does being a woman affect mine? The majority of my career has been spent working on high-rise multi-unit residential projects in Toronto. There have been highs and lows, successes, as well as projects that I wish would have gone another way. But when I start to examine some of the most interesting projects of my career, they are not necessarily residential. What's more interesting, perhaps, is that they are all offshoots, indeed stemming from multi-unit residential beginnings. The projects vary in scale and their stories take unexpected turns. In 2001, I started working on a complicated and interesting project associated with one of the largest cathedrals in downtown Toronto. Churches all over the country were declaring bankruptcy, and the forward-thinking dean of the parish wanted to ensure financial stability for years to come. Together with the developer partner, we proposed a 45-story tower on the grounds immediately adjacent to the church. This open space, known as St. James Park, was heavily used by the general public, although it was indeed church property. The city intervened. Additional land was purchased, and a density transfer was eventually drafted and granted. Spire Condominiums, as it was later named, found a new location across the street, leaving the church in its more comfortable and authentic park setting. With some of the money the church made by selling its air rights, they were able to consider building a new parish hall. It's funny to think that we fell into this project because we had done the condo across the street. The parish had a vision for a state-of-the-art facility and event space that would be multifunctional and revenue generating. The program was varied. In addition to replacing the church archives, outreach space, and apartments for the sexton and other church staff who live on the property, new space was also imagined. Rentable community space would be provided for weddings and funerals. Visiting clergy and lecturers could also be hosted. The church had done their research and a solid plan was hatched. There was a looming issue to manage, however. It was well known that there were a few bodies buried in the area. In the 1830s, there was a cholera outbreak and the sick flocked to the church. When they passed away, the bodies were literally taken out the back door. We commissioned a ground penetrating radar scan, which revealed the extents of a mass grave containing approximately 2,000 to 3,000 bodies. Construction would have to be carefully managed. The new parish hall could not extend beyond the historic footprint of the original 1910 foundations. And how could we acknowledge the mass burial site? We designed a contemplative garden that takes the shape of the originally intended church footprint. We had the original drawings and were able to offer commemoration in a respectful and didactic way. The combined project took over 10 years to complete, and during that time, I got to know the client group very well. Years later, I called the dean and awkwardly asked if he and the church would baptize my children. I'm officially Anglican, but I'm not married. Thankfully, the answer was yes, and my mother-in-law was satisfied for the moment. This is a recent slide of my two kids. The year the project won a Toronto Urban Design Award, the Toronto Society of Architects held their annual party in the main space of the parish hall. Myself and other male colleagues from the office gave tours. The number of people on my circuit kept growing, and someone later told me that I was the only one who was not giving a marketing-based tour of the facility. Instead, I was telling the story of the density transfer and of the bodies buried beneath. In the early 2000s, the University of Toronto put out a call for a student residence. Knowing that the university was targeting a suite style, not dormitory style residence, we, known primarily as condo architects, threw our hat into the ring. We ended up winning the job and building the university's first high-rise residence for Woodsworth College. This project was truly mixed use, with a School of Commerce, classrooms, and a film archive in the lower levels. The successful approval, design, and execution of this project got our foot in the door for future work at the university. Pictured here is the award-winning Center for Cellular and Biomolecular Research. It's a state-of-the-art lab building that uses a double skin facade. The interiors house bamboo forests and gardens and connect to adjacent campus buildings. It's a little known fact that a vivarium sits immediately under the entry court to the buildings on College Street. It's located here to ensure proper ventilation and temperature controls for the animals. Years later, an invitation followed to enter the competition to reimagine King's College Circle in the heart of the university's main downtown campus. But we were unsuccessful in this bid. Meanwhile, the city around the university continued to grow. The need for housing, bolstered by a healthy investor market, resulted in more and more towers being proposed. The skyline was changing at a rapid rate. City Hall was swamped with rezoning applications and official plan amendments. The planning staff who work at City Hall are fond of saying that they are under siege, and in some ways, I have to agree. The exponential growth of our city has opened up a Pandora's box of city building issues. Mistakes were made, and new tall building guidelines were developed and implemented. Civic thresholds and gateways popped up unintentionally. Important views needed to be preserved. Wind needed to be mitigated, and new shadow impacts on our public parks required more careful study. In 2007, the City of Toronto started its own design review panel. At the very first inaugural session, this project of ours was reviewed. I am proud to say that I now sit as a member of this panel and have been for the last 4 years. Many projects were too controversial and needed to be negotiated at higher levels of government, and we as architects became practiced negotiators and strategists as much as designers. A portfolio of high-rise housing previously looked down upon was suddenly considered a more respected form of city building. In 2013, I was interviewed about a 38-story mixed-use project of which I was immensely proud. The subsequent article in our national newspaper referred to me as a member of the tiny international sorority of women who design tall buildings. Was this fact considered a rarity? I hadn't thought about it before. And the word sorority, was that quite right? I thought for a moment about the times in my career that my gender had been mentioned. I have a collection in my mind and I continue to add to it as my career progresses. Here's a sampling. The problem with your career is that you had children too late. You have a very male persona. I'm surprised you have children. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'm not going to get into it. I'm simply sharing. Perhaps some of you have had similar moments. I continued designing tall buildings, all condos, some with spectacular amenity areas. The sites were getting smaller and more challenging, but these always seemed to lead to other interesting, and sometimes, in my opinion, more fun and important undertakings. With increased exposure, invitations to other city building initiatives presented themselves. We were invited to join an ideas-based competition to reimagine the Gardiner Expressway. This elevated highway, completed in 1965, largely severs Toronto from its waterfront. We contacted Diller, Scofidio, Renfro, the authors of the recently completed High Line in New York. Could the Gardiner here in Toronto be highlined? Could we use parts of it as an active tree farm to supply green to new neighborhoods? Could high-rise residential be used to signalize new urban scaled portals to the water? We proposed to take advantage of the sectional conditions at on and off ramps by proposing locations for public art. Could the towers be more expressive with small footprints that literally sprouted up between the elevated expressway and the rail berm? The largest density carrier proposed was a built form that we nicknamed the Gordian Knot. It was located where the lower Don River empties into the Keating Channel. This successful partnership with Diller, Scofidio, Renfro led to another shortlist, this time for a new ferry terminal. Thousands of people from Toronto and the GTA flocked to the Toronto Islands in the summer. The lineups are horrendous and a new terminal experience is required. Could a large slatted canopy be tuned to provide shade and shelter? Could there be warming stations in winter for cooling off, and areas for cooling off in the heat of the summer? Could a geyser shooting out of the middle of the lake accompany the auditory signal when a ferry left the dock, adding an element of delight and whimsy? Toronto continues to come into its own. It has held the position of highest number of cranes in North America for years now. But how tall can we go? And how tall is too tall? The debate in Toronto is constant. In 2011, the Art Gallery at Harbourfront Centre invited 5 architects to make an installation to encourage debate on this issue. Inspired by the work of projection artist Jenny Holzer, we developed a list of over 500 provocative questions or statements about height and density. We proposed a seemingly impenetrable floating box that you had to walk around and duck slightly to get into. Inside, you experienced the upward flow of words, which were obscured at the base and gradually became readable as they moved upwards. Who owns the sky? Tall buildings are the cathedrals of a modern city. Tall Toronto has marginalized suburban renters. Tall Toronto is affluent downtown owners. Would you pay $28 million for the highest home in the city? People hate buildings, but love city skylines. Section 37 trades amenities for density and does public art by an extra 10 stories. These are examples of some of the questions posed and statements put forward. Today, 10 years later, the race for super tall buildings in Toronto is on. They soar to over 300 meters in height. I am pleased to report that we are in the running in our joint venture with Herzog and de Meuron. I have my fingers and toes crossed. But with intense population growth also comes additional stress on infrastructure and social issues. Homelessness is on the rise. Larger firms are asked and obligated to give back. In 2016, the Design Exchange decided to host a fundraiser for Casey House, Canada's first and only standalone hospital for people with HIV/AIDS. 10 firms were asked to design a dining pavilion and host a dinner. We challenged ourselves to create an enveloping and intimate environment in the 12-foot by 12-foot area that we were given. We proposed a simple field of vertical fabric blinds with a space for dining carved out within. David Bowie had just passed away, and our marketing director came up with this fantastic idea of printing David Bowie quotes folded into an AIDS ribbon form. The response to the pavilion was very positive, and it was satisfying to do fundraising for a good cause. From tall to small, multi-unit residential projects here in Toronto have led me down an interesting path so far. In a moment, I will present a case study of a single project. You may have indeed heard of the all-female team leading a mid-rise residential project in Etobicoke called Reina. This project has a story to tell. During the Q&A following, I will be very interested to hear your comments and observations. A successful presentation will have provoked you to perhaps ask yourselves, is this project at all different as a result of an all-woman team? And do women have an advantage when designing housing? This is, in fact, an issue that has been long debated. In 1910, this article boasted that home builders could be sure to get enough closet space by having a woman architect on the job. It goes on to say that Faye Kellogg, pictured here, plans many pretentious houses, always with an eye to the maximum of comfort, beauty, and convenience. And her income is commensurate with her skill. In 1916, in New York, Faye gave an interview while standing on the 9th floor of a skyscraper that she had designed while it was under construction. Thank you, Faye, for paving the way for all of us. Okay, now I'm going to attempt to switch presentation here. Okay, can everybody see that? Maybe if someone could answer, they could let me know.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So at the end of 2018, we were approached by Urban Capital to make a pitch for a new mid-rise project at 689 the Queensway. Urban Capital had been a past client of mine that I was anxious to work with again. Okay. They're known for such award-winning projects as River City. They're a fun company that cares about design. At the sales launch of River City Phase 3, they gave us each a Lego rendition of the project to build. Taya Cook from Urban Capital had teamed up with Sherry Larjani from Spotlight Developments. They had a strong marketing idea that they wanted to test. They were forming an all-women team for the design, development, and construction management of the project. This brain spark happened in response to an article that Taya had read in Toronto Life called Condo Kings. She herself had been working tirelessly in the development industry for 17 years and wondered why no women had made the list. I personally was unsure about the premise. At first, I found the prospect a little cringy, to be honest. While potentially fun and interesting, weren't we past all of this? Don't we really just want to do good work for good clients? It was perhaps newsworthy that an all-women team might propose to build on the former site of a gentleman's club. Oh, the irony. We prepared a pitch, and a female colleague and I, Lisa Spensieri, went to the interview. We sprinkled the presentation with some fun facts about Quadrangle's gender equality, which we noted wasn't by design. And my previous involvement with BEAT came in handy too, and we won the job. This is a picture of our clients, and they really do always look like this. I'm not sure how they do it. In true developer form, the clients wanted an ideation package straight away, not a full-blown design, just a teaser package. And they wondered, how quickly could we turn this around? Could we generate something in a couple of days? We needed to meet with the city as soon as possible with the concept. Turns out men and women developers are cut from the same cloth. They were so anxious to see what we would come up with, and especially as women. This statement was a little perplexing. Had they themselves ever worked with any other women before? We set about looking for good ideas. We brainstormed. Could the building be a beautiful object? Could it sit lightly on the ground like a high-heeled shoe? Could it have texture, like a classic Chanel handbag, which is quilted to give the object rigidity, structure, and longevity? Could a brick facade be inspired by whitework, a technique in which open and closed stitches are worked in white thread on a white foundation fabric? We studied the facades of the predetermined zoning envelope, inspired by this collection of ideas. We proposed a softer architecture with eased edges and curves. We also aspired to knit the building programmatically into the neighborhood. Could the ground floor be conceived as a series of pavilions, providing a high degree of site porosity? We proposed an important east-west through-block connection from the adjacent neighborhood school. An animated green link could encourage safe, fun, play, and passage. A generous south-facing courtyard is proposed. It will be a sun scoop. A visible entrance also invites you into this space from the Queensway. The project has distinct goals on the inside as well. It's not all about the lipstick. Many feel-good elements have been baked into the design so far. The client is interested in meeting the growing up guidelines. This means that suites are not only larger in average size, but are flexible, allowing larger families to be housed now or in future. Knockout panels are proposed to allow for this adaptability. Stroller storage on each floor was easy to accommodate. No more storing strollers in bathtubs. Beyond stroller storage, the clients were looking for other similarly innovative ideas. What additional amenities or features could we offer to further distinguish the project? The client decided to go a step beyond with community engagement by hosting a fun evening to brainstorm and cull ideas. In July of 2019, 140 industry professionals, community members, and interested purchasers spread across 14 tables and participated in a facilitated workshop. The evening was attended by both women and men. Each participant started by sharing pain points of condo living with their table, then broke out into smaller teams to brainstorm creative solutions for the kind of amenities and designs they would want in their condos. Everyone's opinions were heard, and everyone had a voice. We were able to distill issues into 30 categories. The top 5 were suite layout, storage, soundproofing, desire for flexible space, incorporation of greenery and natural elements. To continue public outreach and engagement during the pandemic, our clients held a design competition for university and college students. A $2,000 cash prize was awarded to the most thoughtful and innovative idea. 689 The Queensway is not only a feel-good project publicity-wise, within our office it's a huge win. BDP Quadrangle interiors have been retained for the suites and amenity space design. The soft lines of the exterior have indeed made their way inside. Crisp and clean, but with the warmth of home, the lobby is impeccably styled. An upbeat and vibrant snack shack will have coffee and curated vending machines for quick and healthy bites and late night cravings. Amenities on the ground floor are designed to bring people together. Fitness, hobbies, family fun, and relaxation distinguish this program as different from other condos. Bookable spaces for art and music keep the mess and noise outside of your condo unit. The suggestions made by the community at large were being taken seriously. Continuing in the vein of doing things differently, for the sales center, we proposed a Quonset, a prefabricated structure usually found on farms or army bases. We were inspired by the soft, insulated interior of this image. A free plan of floating vignettes could be super cool. It would look like something foreign had landed on the main street in the neighborhood. The sales center might be up for a year or more, and we found some crafty and creative ideas for the surrounding landscape. These are images of the finished product, the kitchen and bathroom vignettes, and overall images. And the architectural model is displayed front and center. The project pace and objectives so far were like many other projects that we had worked on. But we had to admit, however, that the process was decidedly different. The goals were coming from a different place. Our clients were genuinely interested in creating and delivering more generous condo units that really were family friendly. There was a notable shift. This condo would be less about living the hotel lifestyle and more about coming home. The project name was revealed, Reina, the Spanish word for queen. Whether it was the outreach or the name or the ironic site or the women or a combination thereof, the project suddenly had legs. The Toronto Star and Spacing Magazine wanted interviews. Curbed Magazine in New York wanted to chat. One of our team meetings was filmed for a spot on the local evening news. The BBC was interested in flying the client and I to Vienna to participate in a women-led workshop on design and development that would result in a documentary. What was going on? Our all-women team was creating a buzz. I was asked similar questions by each interviewer. What was different? Was the process different? What was it like to work on an entirely women-led team? When it was built, would you be able to tell by looking at the outside of the building that it had been designed by women? Would there be smarter design elements incorporated into the suite design? A colleague of mine on the City of Toronto Design Review panel said that he'd seen all of the hype. He leaned into me and warned, "All eyes are on you now. You'd better not screw up." I answered the various media questions carefully, declaring myself on some issues and skirting others. The premise of an all-female development team was more provocative than we had imagined. It caused us to pause and reevaluate our role, not only as female architects, but more as role models and potential game changers. It's true that we are ultimately a service-based industry, but occasionally in our work, we find ourselves taking part in a conversation that steps outside of the day-to-day. A high point came for the team when we were featured in the New York Times. Taya and Sherry looking perfect as usual, front and center in the business section and above the fold. BDP Quadrangle's name unfortunately didn't make it into print, but you can see my colleague Lisa's profile and the back of my head is in the foreground. I bought a copy and brought it into the office. I excitedly shared it with another principal. I said, "Look, the back of my head is in the New York Times." He examined the photo and declared an important clarification. He said, "Heather, it's more like your hair is in the New York Times." Of course he was right, but who cares? Who else can boast that their hair was in the New York Times? I'll take it. We hope to build a great project that measures up to all of the hype. The pressure is indeed on. The public interest will soon wane, and the team will shift to the tasks tasks at hand of detailing and building the project. But for now, if there's a conversation to be had, we're happy to be part of it. I gave this presentation in person to our studio a week before the pandemic shut down. Even through COVID, it's amazing how many opportunities have continued to be generated from this small but mighty project. A virtual presentation to the United States Women's Development Collective. Sherry and I recorded a World Architecture News podcast. Even our little sales center was featured in an article on Quadrangle that appeared in the National Post. As recently as last month, our team was honored at the Build Awards, winning the title of Fearless Innovator. It's a new award added to the roster this year that encourages applicants to be, and I quote, game changers causing significant disruption from pre-existing conditions. The highest point during the pandemic, however, was being asked to be a jury member for the World Architecture News Female Frontier Awards. I admit it was more of a commitment than I thought, with several stages of judging among an international panel of uber smart women. It was definitely one of the highlights of my career so far. My exposure to entries from the top female architects in the world and the impressive lineup of judges was a real feather in my cap. I thought, I'm not worthy. But then again, maybe I did have some chops after all. Categories included contribution to architecture, unsung hero, innovation in architecture, and pioneering and social change champion, to name a few. After individually marking all of the entries, we got together virtually to debate in person. Some interesting themes emerged. Why had some categories garnered more applicants than others? We spoke about imposter syndrome and confidence, and we discussed why the awards were so important. We did, as a jury, hit a low point, however. There were a couple of categories where the entries were very, very few. It is the first year for the awards, so there was no historic data to refer to. Were some of the titles too lofty? Or worse, was it as a result of COVID? There was a moment of silence and we all stared at each other through our monitors. Women have indeed suffered a huge setback over the past 18 months. There are simple and undeniable facts. Women make up the majority of single-parent households. Women tend to earn less, and therefore women have fewer savings. The virus has significantly increased the burden of unpaid care, which disproportionately is carried by women. Women's jobs are 2 times more vulnerable in this crisis than men's. This is very bad news for us, as women hold 76% of all healthcare jobs. I see an image like this and I wonder whether I deserve an award that has descriptors like fearless or brave in the title. Earlier this year, the Saturday Star headlined, "How do we kickstart a she-covery?" acknowledging that what's good for gender equality is good for the economy as well. The COVID-19 epidemic has put that truth into stark relief. Have the strides that women have made recently been lost? So this is where our question and answer period begins. In a pandemic year where we have the confidence to declare the theme "Choose to Challenge," let's keep challenging gender equality, and let's remember that as architects, we do have a need to fill. Are we brave and fearless? Every project, every building is a grand experiment. And in my humble opinion, just being an architect requires bravery. Thank you. That's the end. So should I stop sharing?
That's great. Yes, we've got you on the screen now. I think with the rest of us, thank you so much, Heather. That was really amazing. A lot of it resonated, and some of it was just really interesting to hear about your work in the context of building these bigger buildings. Because at the end of the day, for all of the accolades you got for being the all-woman team, essentially you're all just doing your jobs kind of had as you had done them before. So I guess I'll lead it. I would encourage anyone with questions to put them into the Q&A so we can start running through those. But I'll just start off with a question. Doing this Reina project in the office, has that in any way changed the dynamic in the office, the dynamic of mentorship, of the idea of diversity in the office? Has it changed like your internal workings at all? Maybe with younger women coming in, with older people, men and women who may be in there, but just, you know, is your group seen as different or special or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Sorry if you can hear my computer beeping. I don't know how you turn that off, those notifications. Anyway, sorry. But what was super interesting about this project from the very beginning, I was approached by Taya, and I immediately wanted to go for this job. I wanted to work with Urban Capital again. I love their projects. I'd worked with them before. And then I heard about the all-women team. So I brought it to the other principals. And I remember Susan Ruptash, who I think has been an active in Beat a couple of times. She hadn't yet retired, and she said, "Ooh, I don't know, that sounds like reverse discrimination." And I was not expecting that response. And so, you know, some of the advantages of BDP Quadrangle is that they're quite advanced in their thinking about equality. And but I said, well, I think I did say at the time, if there's a conversation to be had, I want to be part of it, and I really want to do this job. So we just went for it. And then since in the office, yes, I think it has made a change. I mean, I made that presentation on March 10th, right before you know, we all shut our doors, I think on March 17th.
Yeah.
The number of people that came up to me in the studio afterwards, mostly women, some men, but saying, Heather, we need more presentations like that. So I think people are, you know, like I didn't think it was such a big deal when I started, but people are hungry to have this conversation. Even I was in a mediation even before I gave this presentation, but Reina was getting a lot of press. And the lawyer that I was with in the mediation said, Heather, I would love for you to just come to our office and give a presentation on this, because I feel like everyone is just like doing the big exhale in the development industry. And again, I thought, really? But I'm not sure. There's kind of an insatiable appetite for talking about it. So I continue to be surprised over and over again.
I'm just going to do one follow-up. Do you find when people are you involved in the hiring process at all? Like because of this project, are you getting women who are, say, interested in going there for big buildings, not just having a job at BDP Quadrangle, because for all the reasons why people just need jobs when they're graduating, but specifically to work with you or to work on projects where understanding that, like, not only could I do this job at BDP Quadrangle, but I could also become a leader at BDP Quadrangle.
Yeah, I can't say specifically that that's happened. Mm-hmm. I am on the recruitment committee, and I do a lot of interviews. I have had many people mention to me in passing, "Oh, I saw your picture on that poster," or, you know, "Great job." And I do think there's definitely a mentorship aspect. Like presenting to the Girl Guides was I gave a presentation to my daughter's troupe even a couple of years ago. That really was a rewarding experience for me. Just telling the girls, like, you can do this. Like, yeah. You know, I'm living proof you can do it. So, yeah.
Sonia, do you want to jump in with a question? I know you have one.
Sure. Yes, yeah, I also really enjoyed your presentation and how you took us through the journey of your work, and then specifically the case study on Reina. So I have a more design specific question kind of related to what Betsy's asking, but you had mentioned that, you know, they were anxious to see what you would come up with as women, as designers. And I think it, you know, it's a question that's asked quite a bit, but how do you think women actually approach design or do design differently? Because this would have been, you know, your first, I assume, all women design team. How is that process different based on all your other experiences, and what did that bring to the table?
Well, I do think it was, to repeat myself, decidedly different. It, of course, was about gross floor area and maximizing, taking advantage of every opportunity that we could. That was all kind of a given. But what was different about this process was the interest in the details right away. Like, it's just starting to talk about, what this project would offer, what people were missing. We got into like kitchen and bathroom design very early on. The attention to detail all the way through the process was way greater than any other experience I'd had. So it wasn't let's say it wasn't like, you have a volume and then you demise it and then you do the suites and then you kind of sort of go linear like that. This was sort of like all things firing at the same time. And the meetings were very fun. I mean, we always started with like a little bit of catch up about, if everyone's kids were okay, or, it was nice because there was this kind of, it's hard to put my finger on it, but kind of underlying understanding that, and an appreciation for the fact that, we were all juggling so many things, and we were enjoying the moment of all working together as women. I don't know how to better say it. Yeah.
I have another question, but I wanted to see if Melanie wanted to ask something or say something.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat here that I thought I would bring forward from the audience. So the question is, do you foresee your experience working with an all-female team having an impact on how you approach future projects and creating future project teams?
I definitely do, because I think that it was actually a stroke of genius for Sherry and Taya to do that kind of big event and invite everyone to have a voice. Like the vibe in the room that night was really exciting. Everyone wanted to talk about condos and be part of solutions on pain points that everyone has. Like, I lived in a condo for 2 or 3 years. And some of the details in condos are really frustrating. I'll give you some examples. I had a closet that had sliding doors, and it was 3 sliding doors, but the 2-foot depth went to the outermost part of the 3rd door. So the 2 doors behind that would always hit like all of your coat hangers. And when they would come together, and I started to notice that all the buttons on my shirt were smashed because the doors just kept hitting, like all of the sleeves. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm really going to pay attention to, this is back to fake Kellogg, but closet depths. And then right at the front of my condo was this weird tangle of doors where if my laundry room door was open the right way at the right time and the entry door to my condo was open, there was this like tangle of doors that would happen and none of the doors would close. Like, that's how tight these entryways are with just room for like barely framing. And then another one was my towel bar in my bathroom was installed like this, and it was driving me crazy. I'd be laying in the bathtub looking at it going, okay, I can't stand looking at this. So I took it off and I went to try and correct it. And I realized that there was a screw that was like it was like a screw head that was glued on. The screw wasn't even like biting. the drywall or the steel stud behind. I'm like, this is crazy. So I'm like trying to put a new screw in and it wouldn't go in. And I realized I was drilling into the back of my electrical panel that was on the other side of the wall in my, really small laundry room. So there was no possible way to actually have a fighting chance of even installing this towel rack. This is how tight these condos are. Did I answer your question? I think I went on a rant there. Anyway. Anyway, so getting to the details early, I think my point is that it's worthwhile. It's a worthwhile endeavor. Yeah.
Shauna, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Heather, that was really, really inspiring and it's such a great presentation. I was wondering why you think the public and the media reacted to the all-female team on Reina in one way, but then as you said, you sort of felt that it's not such a big deal, or at least that it shouldn't be. So I'm wondering what experiences you've had that have given you that perspective. I know, there's a variety of perspectives. Some of us may feel like that this is a huge deal. And, was it mentors in your life that have given you that viewpoint?
Yeah, I will say I've had a number of very strong women mentors. Pat Hansen, a very, very important mentor to me. Shirley Blumberg as well, who have, I think, really encouraged me to put myself out there and to acknowledge that women are different. I mean, it's really easy to just keep your head down and not even think about it. And I'll say that, yeah, like many meetings in my career have been around tables where I'm the only woman. And I have to say, a lot of the time I wasn't super conscious of it. I was just doing my job and trying my best. And I think that's why there's actually been such interest, because I honestly think that people don't see women in the development industry. They think that they're not there or invisible. And I didn't realize that, actually.
I have a follow-up to that, actually, and then maybe Sonia, I know you have another question. Moving forward, Kate, say into construction, like we're working on a house and we have a framing crew, female framing crew on the house.
Yeah.
And it's is there ambition to kind of continue this on through to construction? There was an article that came out, I think it was like in Building Magazine or something like that, about how women in trades is kind of like this new labor pool that, like, surprise, there's a bunch of women who may want to be in the trades. And I kind of posted on Instagram, like, our contractors are always complaining about not being able to find good trades. And it's like, well, maybe they're just looking in the wrong place. Do you think Reina could actually have a really big voice in the kind of trades that you hire to build it?
Yeah, they are absolutely wanting that for sure. And the list of people who have reached out to Taya and Sherry that are trades that are women, they have a huge catalog. It's actually quite amazing.
Wow.
In my career,
yeah.
Now I'm not like a total site person. I'm more of a front end person, but I've been on a lot of job sites. I've only ever seen one woman who was a tile setter. Down the street from me, they're renovating a house, and they had a crew of women stonemasons. That was pretty cool. So I think absolutely we have our eye on getting as many women on site as possible. I do know, I think historically, it's kind of sad, but I know that there's just not the same amount of kind of equipment, and this is a practical comment, like safety equipment, gloves, overalls, all of that. There's just like, I think just recently our world has turned to producing those very practical things in women's sizes. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think it's absolutely true, actually. So hopefully, since people, women will be able to have the proper safety gear and everything, that will encourage hopefully more women to embrace these trades.
Thanks, Heather. We do have another question in the chat. Was there any specific item in this design process that really surprised you that you did not expect? And just to add to that, I'm just wondering if you felt at any point that a male perspective was missing from the design process.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't at any point feel like a male perspective was missing. And the first part of that, is there anything that surprised me? Sorry, I'm blanking on what you said at the beginning.
Yes, whether there was any specific item that in the design process that surprised you.
Yeah, there's a couple actually. What was really great, I'm so glad I get the opportunity to say this. So we'd had a couple of meetings with the city of Etobicoke at Etobicoke City Hall, like you do at the beginning of a project, and they're saying it's too tall and it's too big and they want bigger setbacks and they really want the ground floor, distinguished from upper floors. And we were trying to do like a fabric, so we were resisting some of those ideas. Anyway, the second meeting that we went to, they very proudly, the city planners, urban designers, traffic, they responded with an all women, it was all women on the city side, and they were really excited. They said we're going toe to toe with you, and we're just going to have all of our women staff here. So it was great, actually, and I was very surprised and happy that they were engaged in the process. I also, as far as the building itself, I am surprised and thrilled about the amenity in the building. There are some very specific ideas that the interior designers at my office can speak about better than I can, but there are really great ideas about a share library downstairs. So if you need like a KitchenAid blender, you can go down and sign one out instead of having, 1/3 of your upper cupboards in your condo dedicated to, appliances that you use 3 times a year or less. And this idea of a snack shack and having your kids be able to go down there and make a mess somewhere that's not in your space, I think is just amazing. So it really has the effect of the building feeling more like a community rather than, a kind of hotel lifestyle where people just go up to their own individual suites and that's that. So I think it's an experiment. I'm really anxious to see how it turns out.
There's a question in the Q&A about with an all-women team, did you feel any pressure to draw from feminine or historically female craft precedents or imagery? And I noticed the weaving, the lace, kind of the embroidery, for lack of a better word. And was there ever a discussion around shying away from that versus embracing it? Like, it's like maybe the question is, are you leaning into it, or did you say we would propose this anyway because this is something that's beautiful?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I would say that no, there was no pressure for the ideas to come from anywhere specific. I will say that my colleague Lisa, who has been my right hand on this project, is a feminist, I would say. I know she's not on the line tonight because she's busy, but she wouldn't mind me saying this, I don't think. And when I started to bring forward these ideas of white work, she was like, "Oh, Heather, are you sure you want to go there?" You know, and she was one of my biggest critics, and she started to question that. And I think we had 1 or 2 debates on it. And it's funny, for the same reason that you just said, or the person asked, I said, Lisa, you know what, this isn't about, like, she was thinking, she has like a sort of half degree in art and history, and she's thinking about the history of women, like, you know, being forced to maybe do this when they don't want to. But I see it as, you know, something that can be celebrated. That's an art that, like, my daughter, surprisingly, is totally into handicrafts. My son is playing computer games all the time, and my daughter is knitting, crocheting, and doing petty point. She loves it. Like, I think, why not? So I don't know. I hope I answered the question. I don't.
You did. That's wonderful. And I totally relate to your daughter. I was in that. I was the same kind of kid.
Me too.
So I have a question that will segue into our kind of end of our program here. And you've talked a lot about how the organization of the condo itself, and like how the condo itself works. On November 13th, we're holding a forum about equity in the public realm. And one of the most important pieces of all of these condominium projects that you've worked on is how they interface with the public realm, how they become part of the fabric that everyone experiences, not just the people living in the condominiums.
Yeah.
Maybe just speak briefly about the relationship that this team has with rethinking or thinking about the public space that's associated with the condominium.
Yeah, that's also a very good question. From the outset, we knew that it was very important to keep this through block connection, because there was a school right here, and it was already very well traveled by people in the community. So we said, okay, I think we have to give in to that. You know, it demonstrates really, you know, it's putting our best foot forward to leave that space open so that people can continue that. And so we very quickly assigned it as a kind of linear green space. We had a lot of debate about the courtyard and whether or not people would be able to just walk right into it from the Queensway. And in the end, we did not do that because it really is like the building amenity, and it has to be safe. We talked about it being gated, like open during the day and then closed at night. So that was a kind of healthy debate. And then we had townhouses at grade. We still have them, but they have graduated from townhouses to multi-generational suites. Actually, nice. where you know, an aging parent or parents are just like, you know, one doorway away, like a kind of suite in a hotel. Or if your teenager, you know, can't, or your 20 something can't afford to, you know, flight, you could have them just, you know, nicely at arm's length. So those units are on the east and west sides of the building. And then on the Queensway itself, we really took the attitude that the kind of predominant, very low single story retail that's in this area, it's a lot of nail bars and variety stores and things. Really, like, this was a big conversation with the city, whether we keep that datum line or do we break with that and really kind of aim higher. So we still have this kind of undulating ground floor that really starts to, I think, encourage and attract smaller retailers, mom and pop sort of scale retailers is what we're trying to attract here with this project.
Thank you. So Shauna's going to officially thank you from Beat. I'm going to say thank you first because it's so great. It's been great to see you in person a little bit recently, yeah, and just really nice to hear about what you've been working on and in the background to the story that's been in the press so much. So Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it off to Shauna.
Heather, on behalf of BEAT, we'd like to thank everyone in attendance and for joining and participating in tonight's event. A special thank you to you, Heather, for giving this talk and connecting everyone virtually. We're thrilled to have the opportunity to hear about your career and work, as well as your insights into the role of gender in the design of buildings. So to everyone in attendance, you'll receive a Con Ed certificate by email for attending tonight.
Our next BEAT event is the BEAT Forum, How Can We Design Equitable Spaces, on November 13th at 10:30 a.m. For more information on the upcoming events, please sign up for our mailing list on the BEAT website. You can also follow BEAT on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks again and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Heather. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi.